So now moving to our next panelist, Vadim Brinzan. Vadim, what's your perspective on all these challenges?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Minister, Madam Moderator. Dear guests, it's a pleasure and honor to be here at the third Moldovan-American Convention. It's my first time participating in this event, and I'm very glad to be here finally. I have to say that I agree pretty much with everything that Anatol has said and Doreen has said, but I'd like to take a step back and look at the issues from a broader perspective. I think we all agree that the patient is in coma and requires a heart surgery, and I truly believe that the patient will recover, but the question is how long will it last given the current state of affairs. So what I would like to do is just take a step back and look at the broader picture, kind of look at the, say, root causes of this issue from the investor perspective point of view. Being a private equity investor, I would like to basically look at it as an investor, as an outside investor who tried to or attempted to make investments in Moldova in the past, and also as a fund recipient, as someone who lives in Moldova. And one of the fundamental questions that any I guess country needs to decide for itself from the economic point of view is what's the country's competitive advantage on the global scale, international scale. As an economic player, what we as Moldovans, as Moldova, can do better, cheaper, and more efficiently than everyone else in the world. That's a question that Moldovans have been struggling for the last 25 years. I don't think they have found an answer yet. If you go and ask people there, they say, all right, what's Moldova about? They'll tell you about agriculture, what great food we have, and wine we make, and so on and so forth. But as His Excellency Ambassador Vlad Lupan mentioned today, in fact, Moldova has become a service-based economy, like the United States. 64% of GDP is services, right? But but we consider ourselves a post-industrial society with service-based economy. Do we have enough infrastructure, human resources, highly educated human resources to support this level of services when 60% of people work in agriculture that produces 20% of GDP and only 20% produce 60% of GDP? That creates a lot of issues. So the question that I think we as a country need to answer ourselves, like, okay, which way are we going to? Do we want to become an agricultural country, or do we want to become a post-industrial service-based economy? And I think the answer is self-evident. We have already become a service economy. Then we need to think of investments in infrastructure, investments in education, investments in our people, because that's the only way to succeed. So that's kind of, so once we figure out this, we can come up with a plan as a government, from the government point of view, as a plan for the next 10, 15 years. What exactly do we need to do? How do we allocate resources in order to achieve this goal? Because at this time, I don't think our government has any idea which way we need to go or which way we want to be perceived in the world from the economic point of view. Now, as an investor, now talking microeconomically, when I go into Moldova and I try to make investments there, the first thing that the question that I ask is like, okay, how am I going to get my investment protected? How do I make sure that I don't make an investment and then someone comes to a radar attack and use fraud to basically deprive me of my investment? And I never get a real answer other than, you should try and things will happen. And even if I try to come as an investment from the US with the US fund going in there, still the questions remain. So it's all about corruption, it's all about institutional reform, legal reform, and other reforms that we will talk about here. So I think we as a diaspora need to have a bigger voice when it comes to things that happen in Moldova. Think about it. Remittances, right? They constitute about 30% of GDP. 1.5 billion last year, about 1 billion this year, 30% down. And now, so we as Moldovans sent home $1.5 billion. GDP is roughly 7 and change. If you take into account the money speed, the money velocity in the economy, which is about 4 to 5 times, take that 1.5, let's say 1 billion goes into bank accounts, multiplied by 4, almost the entire GDP is formed by our remittances. We support that country. Right? We send money home, they just simply spend some of it, and the rest goes into bank accounts, banks lend, and so on. So money goes around 4 times because it's all short-term investments. There is no longer-term investment strategy. They invest in short-term import-export operations. That's hence 4 or 5 times velocity speed. So we basically, as a diaspora, support that country, our country, Moldova. So, but we don't have a voice there. They do whatever they want, and every time I go there, they tell me literally, sometimes directly, sometimes indirectly, just send money home, we'll figure it out without your help, how to spend and what to do it. And I said, you know what, it's my money, and I want to see how you guys are going to spend it, right? It's not like, I'm going to give it to you. And especially when we know we as taxpayers and pay millions of dollars here in taxes, then they take our money, send it home, and then that money disappears overnight from a bank the night before the election. And then they ask ourselves, now, okay, now we've been elected for 4 years. How about the force majeure that just happened, that you guys stole $1 billion from literally in a matter of days? So we as a diaspora must have a stronger voice. How we can do it? One way to do it is what Anatol said, just call your representatives in Congress and the Senate and just talk about the issue, because maybe they don't even know that. What's $1 billion for the United States? Not such a large amount of money, but for Moldova, that's a huge amount of money, right? It's 1/7 of the GDP. So that's one thing. Second, we need to unite together sometimes, meet at these meetings, and have our voice heard through non-governmental organizations. We have plenty of them in Moldova, but what do they really do? We'll have people from Moldova invited who are present. He will talk more in details about legal issues and structural issues related to law enforcement and to judicial system in general. But I'd like to focus on civil society, right? We have plenty of organizations funded by different sponsors from inside and outside of Moldova, whose job is literally to look at the legislations. And do they do their job? They don't, because in the past 3 to 4 years, if you look and do an analysis of the laws that the government has passed, the parliament has passed, you will see some weird things like, for example, collective responsibility, which basically says if everyone in the government votes for something that's illegal, that nobody is responsible. How about that? And nobody even said the word about it. It's like, you go and say, look, but this is fraud. They say, but it's a collective responsibility. Sorry, there is nothing you can do about it, right? Talk about, so that's one thing, the way we can go and talk directly to these non-governmental associations and basically tell them, what are you people doing? Let's work together, ask for help. Second, maybe some of us can just go out there and volunteer and just literally work if you have time and you have resources to do so. If not, maybe the government that's in need of, I think they realize that they need people, educated people with experience to come out there on some sort of say, in and out program, work half a year here or 1 year, provide advice, and then go back home where your family is. Maybe to come up with ideas like that, and when come up to create some sort of a fund, if you will, to send people in and out to help the government with advice and consulting, if you will, or maybe just work in some government position there. Next thing is just provide our input on what we know. For example, in banking, right? I come from banking background. I used to work on Wall Street and then raised the fund, became a private equity investor. And I had investments in England, I had investments in India and China, and obviously in the US. And I know how system works there. Like, for example, in England, a few years ago, they've introduced, they require, first of all, every single company that's registered there to declare who the last beneficial owner is. Not only that, the person who signed the statement is personally responsible. It's a felony to make false statements under that statement. So basically, people will just go to jail by making false statements about who the last beneficial owner of the company is. Look what's happening in Moldova. Everyone is nice and clean, but their relatives have businesses all around and bank accounts and so on and so forth, and nobody is responsible. But we all know that who the last responsible person is, and there is no penalty under law for providing false statements. So that's one thing, for example, where we can look into an influence to reduce some level of corruption. And then in banking, it's very unusual to hear some of the Moldovan bankers say that, look, yeah, $20 billion went through our bank here recently from Russia, But who knows, maybe that money is clean money. Imagine that. I open a bank account in America, and next day I wire $20 billion through that bank account. You think it's going to go through? I'll immediately get the phone call, and people ask me, okay, where is this money coming from? What you doing? Because it's called Know Your Client rule. And it's a rule that is respected by the entire world. In Moldova, apparently it's not. They say, well, yes, $20 billion came from Russia, and next day left Moldova. So how does it work? It just works. So things like that, we need to make our voice heard, either through direct involvement somehow, by going there and working there if if they need our help, or just work together here and help other people who are on the ground in Moldova and want to make the change, to help with advice, to help financially, whoever, as much as we can. So these are the few ideas that I had in my mind I wanted to share with you today. Thank you.